Howdy, boys and girls. I'm so glad to see you today. This is Miss Lynn coming from the ranch at Neva Lomaset Memorial Library today. I hope you love horses as much as I do. I grew up in my family, and our daughters did the same thing, loving horses from the time we were about first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade. We were wanting to ride horses every chance we could get. We were wanting to read books about horses. And I just want to share a couple things about one of my favorite horse authors. She is Marguerite Henry. And one of my favorite books of hers is called Misty of Chincoteague. So check out Marguerite Henry, Misty of Chincoteague. She wrote one called Justin Morgan Had a Horse, King of the Wind, the Brown Sunshine in the Sawdust Valley. But she wrote books about real places and real horse farms and wild ponies, the ponies that lived on Chincoteague Island and Assateague Island. And you can learn all about the historical happenings of a Spanish galleon that crashed on the coast, all of the horses and ponies that escaped, and they grew up wild on the islands along the coast. And so I would love for you to pick up any of these books. You can put them on hold here at the library, and I think you'll enjoy them. Boys, girls, anybody loves these books. Second, third, fourth grade readers will do fantastic with it. Also, if you comment today about the story time that you're watching now, your name can be put in for a drawing for this little book. It's a free book, Magic Ponies. So it is a fantasy story, but oh so sweet, and I think you'll love it too. We have that available here as well. One book that we only have one copy in the region is called Mrs. Mack. And those of you that know me know I love this author. She is my favorite. Patricia Pelago was one of those young girls that loved horses as well. And she is going to be bringing us our feature book today. Now, this book is a little bit long. It's several chapters, so of course we won't be able to do the entire thing today, but I will get you started with it. It is autobiographical in nature, which means that it is something to do with her life as a young girl. And the name of the book is Mrs. Mack by Patricia Pelago. So here we go. Dogpatch. It was the summer of my 10th year. I was spending it with my dad in Michigan, just as I had since I was 4. My brother Richie, my dad, and I were sitting on the top porch, gnawing on sweet corn and watching fireflies shimmer up from the newly mowed grass. Dad grew unusually quiet and thoughtful. He leaned back against the porch step, loosened his belt, and said, "Yes, sirree, I think this is going to be the summer, Patricia." I waited for the longest time for his next word. "I think this is going to be the summer that you are going to learn to ride." Well, I don't know about you, but little Patricia has a misunderstanding with something her pa is telling her. My heart leapt in my chest. I knew Dad would knew about my special dream of having a horse of my very own. Learning to ride this summer could mean only one thing. He was going to get me a horse. When Dad, I managed to squeal, I turned cartwheels for the pure excitement of it. He fell forward. Tomorrow. How's that, my little filly? How's tomorrow? The next morning, Richie went off to camp, and I got dressed in my riding clothes from San Francisco. It was a special day. I was going to get my own horse. We dropped Richie off at camp. Dad headed down the highway toward the college town. Where are we going, Dad? I said. I was barely able to contain my excitement. Maybe the stable was somewhere near the college. You'll see. I tried to imagine what the horse would look like. Maybe I'd never, ever have to ride an old dumb pony again in the tired merry-go-round circles. When we got to Lansing, Dad drove past the college. We went out to the city center of Potter's Field. I looked out the window. We were driving past some shacks and run-down houses. I realized we were in Dogpatch, the roughest part of town. Dad had made a terrible mistake. There can't be horses here. Then we stopped right in front of the most shabby stable that I had ever seen. I could feel tears well up in my eyes. Dad wasn't going to get me a horse at all. I didn't want to get out of the car, but Dad took my hand, so I did. And I met Mrs. Mack. She had on snake skin boots. She walked up and Dad said, Mrs. Mack has known more about horses than most people will forget in their lifetime. Hey, sugar, you must be Pat, she said. She made it sound like Pat, not Pat. Leave it right there. Pat, meet Donnie and Nancy, she said. They looked me up and down, show her around. That's one fancy outfit, they said to me. You must be from Hollywood. We walked from stall to stall as they introduced me to the horses. Salty, Buster, Lady, Pal. I really didn't remember what they were saying because I felt so out of place. Then Nancy jumped up on the fence rail, and I jumped up too. That one there is Apache. She's a strawberry Appaloosa, Mrs. Mack's horse. Nobody rides him besides her. The only other good horse in the stable is this one. This one here is Penny. Penny, ain't she grand? Said Donnie, like he'd forgotten I was there. But he was right. My eyes followed Penny's contours. She was perfect, a beautiful buckskin mare with black socks. The horse took a step. Her muscles danced through her legs. She looked like a bright copper penny. She looked at me with her beautiful, intelligent eyes. Her ears cupped forward as she made a waffling sound that rippled through her nostrils. This horse, this is the one, I thought. She was everything that was beautiful about a horse. She was my dream. Suddenly, it didn't matter that I was in Dogpatch or that these kids didn't like me. Nothing mattered to me anymore. except having the chance to be there with Penny. Well, for the rest of the day, I just stood and watched the bustle that went on around me. Donnie and Nancy ignored me. They took renters on trail rides. Whenever they returned, they went into the office to drink coffee. I felt useless. I started to feel lonely, especially when Mrs. Mack left to pick up new bridles. I found myself going back to where Penny was and standing and looking at her and dreaming of a time I might be good enough to ride her. When Dad came to pick me up after work, I didn't say much, but the next morning I was bright and early, ready to go. I wore my jeans and t-shirt this time. No ribbons or rhinestones for me. "Hey, Hollywood," I heard Donnie call out as we arrived. "You look like one of us today." He smiled and I smiled back. Nancy bolted over between us. "She'll never be one of us. Too soft." But she handed me a pitchfork. "Here, clean out the manure." Oh, you know what that is. That's horse poop. The manure in number 3, 6, and 8 stalls. When you're through with those, curry down Pal and Butch. Someone put them away last night without brushing them. Where is Mrs. Mack? I wondered. I shoveled and pitchforked and curried, that means brushing, and swept and cleaned. Sweat dripped down my chin, but I finished my chores before Nancy did, and I cleaned more stalls. "Not bad for a city girl," she sneered at me. Just then, I felt a strong hand in the middle of my back. It was Mrs. Mack. "Nice job," she said. Then she looked at me. "Okay, sugar, let's get you started on a horse today." "You mean I'm going to ride?" "Well, you sure are," she answered. "By myself," I sputtered. "All by yourself." "Pal is the gentlest horse I have," she said. "I wouldn't put you on anything that might hurt you." I climbed up and stepped on her hand and threw my leg right over Pal's back. The saddle seemed really hard and unbelievably small. The ground looked miles below me. "Keep your heels down. Sit back into the saddle," she reminded. "Ease the reins gently in the direction you want to go." Mrs. Mack kept talking to me. Finally, she led Pal across the road to the large corral. Every step Pal took seemed to rattle my bones. The next thing I knew, Mrs. Mack opened the gate and let go of Pal's bridle, and I was all alone. Donnie and Nancy came in too. For the first time in my life, I was riding a horse alone. It wasn't attached to a wheel turning. "Keep your hands soft, Pat," Mrs. Mack called out from the fence. "And don't hang on to the saddle horn, Hollywood," Donnie said. He grinned at Nancy. She trotted me around. They rode so well, I could feel tears welling up again. Just then, though, I heard Mrs. Mack's voice. "You look like you were born on the back of the horse, sugar." I could feel the sun shining on my face. I could almost feel my heartbeat, keeping time with Pal's steps. One day, I would leave that corral and be a good enough rider to ride out onto the trails. I knew I would. Every day for a whole week, I rode good old Pal around the corral. By the end of that first week, I had learned how to put a bridle on him. I had learned how to saddle him and even how to back him up. But then one day I was riding Pal across the street and he lurched sideways. I lost my balance and fell off. I struggled to hang on to the reins, so Pal just dragged me along on the ground. "It's okay, Hollywood," Donnie was saying to me. He took the reins from my clenched fist when Pal finally stopped dragging me. His voice was soft and soothing. This happened to all of us when we started. Even Nancy helped me up off the ground. One thing you gotta do is get back up on that horse and ride him around the corral one more time, even if you can taste the fear, she said. They were both smiling at me for the first time. I swallowed my fear, got back on, and rode Pal around the corral 3 more times. Mrs. Mack was standing with Donnie and Nancy. A huge round man came bustling across the street from the stable. He stood next to her. He had messy red hair, a huge red mustache, red cheeks, and a crooked cigar wedged between his teeth. I found out later he was Doc Beck, the best darn veterinarian in all of Michigan. As the days passed into weeks, I graduated from old Pal. I rode Buster, a stocky bay. I rode Taffy, a pretty buckskin. Mrs. Mack even let me go out on short trail rides with Donnie and Nancy while I was riding on Salty. One day she paired me up with Nancy and a paying customer to take them out for a trail ride. But at the end of the day, I always came back to where Penny was to kiss her goodbye. I would climb into the stall with her, pull up on an overturned bucket, and just sit there with her. Sometimes she would plunge her muzzle into the top of my head and muss up my hair. Sometimes she'd waffle and sniff my ears with her nostrils. Most of the time, we would just sit there together. I longed to ride her. It would be an answer to my nightly prayer. One day, as I arrived at the stables, Mrs. Mack announced the next horse that I would ride would be Duke. That was normally Donnie's mount. Mrs. Mack thought I was good enough to try him. First, I rode him in the corral. We all did with our first time on a mount. Then Mrs. Mack watched me carefully. When she was sure I could handle him, she let me go out on the trail with Donnie and Nancy. We were coming back from that ride, crossing a busy street near the stables, and a car came out of nowhere. Duke reared. He lurched his neck. He wrenched the reins from my hands. He broke into a canter, then a dead run. I had lost control. I was on a runaway horse and no way to stop him. Duke kept running faster and faster. I tried to reach down for the reins, but then I lost my balance and nearly fell off. Finally, I got hold of one of them. I pulled as hard as I could. This made Duke run in a circle. The circle got smaller and smaller until he slowed down enough for me to reach the other rein and stop him. When I got back, I put Duke away and I went back to see Penny. I climbed the fence near her. She waffled and came close to me. I put my arms around her. My tears rolled down the horse's neck. Through my tears, I could see someone watching me over the fence. It was that old man. I looked away. I didn't want him to see me crying. I heard Mrs. Mack's voice say, "It's all right, Hap. I'm right here with her. Every time I think I know horses, something happens." I sobbed. "Sugar," she said softly, "that's how you learn. The more of them that you ride, the more experiences you have, and the better rider you'll be." I cried so much. "You're a natural though, Pat. You are a natural. You stayed with the saddle. You got a hold of one of the reins. You pulled him in a circle. I never taught you to do that. You are a natural." Just then, Penny came over. She nudged me with her head. Mrs. Mack looked surprised. "How often do you come to the corral with Penny?" she asked me. "All the time I can," I answered. "She's not very friendly with people," she said. The man next door had gone inside. "Do you know about that old man, Mrs. Mack?" I asked her. "I can't say that I know him, but I do know why he is the way he is." "Sometimes," I said, "it seems like he's watching me when I work out." "He probably admires you, Sugar, how hard you work to master riding. He, more than anyone, understands hours and hours of practicing. He was a flyer. He was a flyer with the Ringling Brothers Circus, a trapeze artist." "That old man? What happened to him?" "One night during a performance, he missed a catch. He dropped his own brother. There was no safety net." "Did he fall?" "That's just it. He didn't fall. His brother did. His brother died during that fall." "Hap, that old man there, he blames himself. So now he's crippled up. You see, he's crippled up inside, Pat." Well, the next morning, when I came back to the stables, I brought a sack of molasses cookies that my grandma had made. I put them near Hap's back door, and I waited by the stable door until I saw him collect them and take them into his house. And from that day forward, the cookies were as much a part of my mornings as visiting my sweet copper penny. One day, the blacksmith came to shoe her, and she hated getting shoes on. I stayed right there beside her. He gave us I lost my place. The blacksmith gave us extra nails and made them into rings for us kids. I asked him if he'd make a larger one for my dad. But instead of giving that ring to my dad, I put it in the next bag of cookies that I left by Hap's back door. And that is going to be all that I read from this book today. But I am going to tell you that Pat gets to continue writing for so long that she rides that copper penny horse. She loves that copper penny horse. There is a very traumatic situation with Pat and Penny and the old man. And that is all I'm going to tell you, because I love to give you a little bit of suspense. So if you know me, come and see me. I'll loan you my copy of Mrs. Mack, and you can read the end of this book here in our library, because like I told you, we don't have very many copies of this book in our regional system. I do hope that you have your library card this month, that you are able to read any of our books about horses, because after the horses leave the stable this week, we have Wilbur. Wilbur the pig is coming to take over the barnyard. Wilbur is taking over the barnyard for the month of October. And Fern and Wilbur and Charlotte, all of those friends will be here to feature a book by E.B. White called Charlotte's Web. We'll be having crafts and drawing, and our own local artist, Ms. Hannah, is going to be showing us how to do some drawings. We'll be demonstrating the crafts for you. And Miss Tara is going to be doing some professional reading for us during the month of October, some pre-recorded chapters. We'll be doing about 4 to 5 chapters a week of the book Charlotte's Web. So I hope that you join us next week on Wednesday, 3:30. Tell your friends in school-age story groups to come and join us also. And of course, I would love to see you and say hello to you in person at the library, but story times continue being done in our virtual realm. So I'll see you next time, friends, and I hope that you have a good week and enjoy your reading time. Bye.